I know it's my dog. Hey,
Zona,
Zona.
Zona,
Zona.
Zona.
Welcome back to Reality Tea, and tonight, we're stepping into a different kind of story. Not drama, not conflict, not the chaos of sister wives, but something softer, something real, something that reaches straight into the heart of anyone who's ever needed unconditional love, and finally found it. Because Meri Brown has revealed something she's never shared with this level of honesty before. Not about Cody, not about the past, not about the family fractures, but about the one being she trusts completely. The one soul who, as she says, was meant to be. And it's not who you think. It all began in a moment Meri didn't see coming. New Year's Eve, 2023. A night most people fill with resolutions, countdowns, parties. But for Meri, it was a night of quiet, a night of reflection, a night where the world felt a little too big and she felt a little too small. And that's when she met Zona. In her own words, she said, "I didn't know when I met her which one of us needed the other more. I just knew we were meant to be. It was fate." And something about the way she wrote that, it didn't feel like a cute caption. It felt like the truth from somewhere deep, somewhere that had been waiting to speak for a long time. Because when Meri picked up that tiny dog, she wasn't just bringing home a pet, she was bringing home a companion, a reason to smile again, a heartbeat that finally matched hers. She didn't post it right away, she didn't announce it with some big, look at me moment. Instead, she watched, she learned, she let this dog settle into her life. And day by day, Zona did more than settle, she anchored. Meri says, she is life, she is love, she is belonging. And when you hear her voice reading those words out loud, you can feel years of loneliness, disappointment, and emotional exhaustion softening, just a little, into something warmer. Imagine that moment, Meri sitting on the couch, Zona curled into her side like she's always belonged there. A quiet room, a soft lamp, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty anymore. The camera could zoom in on Meri's hands, steady for the first time in a long time, gently brushing over Zona's fur. That's not just a moment, that's a home finally exhaling. Because Zona didn't just enter Meri's life, she filled it. She filled the empty rooms, she filled the quiet mornings, she filled the heavy evenings, and she filled spaces Meri didn't even know were still hurting. And yet, as beautiful as that bond is, as healing as it sounds, there's a deeper reason Meri shared this story now. A reason that sits beneath the caption, beneath the sweetness, beneath the photos. A reason she hasn't said out loud, not yet. And that's where the story turns. Before we go deeper, before we talk about the moment Meri realized Zona wasn't just a dog but a lifeline, something happens next that changes the tone completely. And it begins with one single sentence Meri whispered off camera. A sentence no one expected. To hear that, you'll need to stay with me. The next chapter of Meri's journey doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens slowly, quietly, the way most deep healing does. After that New Year's Eve adoption, life didn't instantly change. Doors didn't swing open with answers. Old wounds didn't magically close. But something subtle began to shift. Every morning, Zona padded softly into Meri's room, and instead of waking up alone, Meri woke up with purpose, with presence, with a tiny heartbeat curled against her arm, a reminder that she wasn't facing the day by herself. And for someone who spent decades in a plural marriage where she often felt like an afterthought, that simple, steady companionship meant everything. In her Instagram post, Meri wrote, "She's fueled my heart when it felt empty, reminded me to play when life felt heavy." You can picture it, a quiet house, just Meri and Zona. A tug toy, a slow walk, a moment of laughter she didn't expect. Zona bounding across the room with that puppy energy, the kind that insists you get up, move, breathe, feel again. And there, in those tiny moments, Meri started rediscovering pieces of herself, pieces that hadn't been touched in years. Her friends noticed it first. They said she was lighter, more present. Her eyes didn't drift as much, her shoulders didn't carry the same weight. But there was something else Zona gave her, something Meri didn't talk about publicly. A kind of emotional permission. Permission to feel joy without waiting for it to disappear. Permission to love without being compared. Permission to exist without shrinking herself to fit someone else's comfort. Permission to be vulnerable without being judged for it. Meri said, "Our bond is pure magic, unspoken, unconditional, undeniable." Those aren't casual words. They're the kind someone says when a connection becomes a lifeline. And that's exactly what Zona became. Because on the nights Meri sat alone, the nights when old memories hit the hardest, the nights when the silence of her house reminded her just how much she had lost, Zona felt it. Dogs always do. Meri once said in an off-camera moment, "She knows what I need before I say anything." And if you've ever loved an animal like that, you know it's true. The gentle nudge, the warm weight against your leg, The way a dog looks at you like you're the entire world, even when you feel like you're falling apart. But here's the twist. For as much comfort and joy as Zona brought into Meri's life, as much healing as she offered, there was one moment, one night, that changed their bond forever. A night when Meri didn't just lean on Zona, she needed her. A night when something from Meri's past resurfaced, and suddenly, the emotional weight she thought she'd buried came crashing back. That moment, that turning point, is where everything deepens, and the real story begins. Healing rarely moves in a straight line, and for Meri, the night that proved it started like any other. The house was quiet, that soft, echoing quiet you only get when you finally sit still long enough to hear your own thoughts. Meri had just finished answering some messages, scrolling through memories she didn't expect to revisit. Old photos, old words, old chapters she thought she had closed. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Inside, Zona lay curled at Meri's feet, warm, steady, breathing slow. But then something changed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even visible. It was internal. A shift, a wave of emotion she didn't see coming. She clicked on a video, one from years ago, showing her younger self standing beside a family she once believed would last forever. The sound of laughter filled the room. Her laughter. The laughter of someone who didn't know what was coming. Meri froze. She hadn't heard that version of herself in a long time. The smile in that video. The hope in her eyes. It hit her harder than she expected. The past doesn't knock. It barges in. And in that moment, in the glow of her screen, Meri's breath hitched. Her throat tightened. Her hands shook just enough for Zona to notice. Dogs always notice. Before Meri even realized she was spiraling, Zona lifted her head. Her ears perked. Her eyes focused directly on Meri's heartbreak. No hesitation. No confusion. Just instinct. Zona stood up, pressed her tiny body against Meri's leg, and rested her head right in Meri's lap. It was such a small gesture, but Meri would later describe it as life-saving. She whispered, "How do you always know?" Her voice cracked on the last word. Zona didn't move. She didn't blink. She didn't shift away. She just stayed, steady, grounding, wholeheartedly present. That was the moment something inside Meri broke open, not painfully, but gently, the way a wound finally lets in air so it can start to heal. She placed her hand on Zona's head, and the floodgates opened. Tears she'd held in for years finally came forward, silent at first, then unstoppable. Zona sat through all of it, every sigh, every whisper, every pause. Meri later described it as, "The night she anchored me. The night I felt understood without saying a word." And that's the thing about deep emotional bonds. They rarely come from the easy days. They come from the quiet nights where the truth finally surfaces. But what Meri didn't know, what she couldn't have predicted, was that this moment was only the beginning of a much bigger shift in her life. Because after that night, something else happened. Something Meri hadn't talked about publicly. Something that would push this healing journey to a place she never expected. And Zona was right in the center of it. After that night, the night Meri finally let the past loosen its grip, things began shifting in small but powerful ways. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a soft sunrise you don't notice until the light is already filling the whole room. Meri started waking up a little earlier. She started stepping outside more, letting fresh air replace the heaviness she used to carry into every morning. She started talking to people again, really talking. Not the polite small talk, not the surface level, "I'm fine," but the deep stuff, the truth. And every step she took, Zona was there. One morning after breakfast, Meri sat in her living room with a notebook, the same one she had avoided for months. A notebook full of unfinished thoughts, half-written intentions, and pages she couldn't bring herself to face. Zona climbed onto the couch, curled beside her, and rested her chin right on that notebook. Like a sign, like the universe saying, "It's time." So Meri opened it. At first, it was just pages she'd scribbled during some of the hardest moments. Phrases like, "Start over, somehow, find what's real, stop pretending this doesn't hurt." But then she reached a blank page, a completely empty one. The kind of page that decides your future. Meri grabbed a pen. Zona nudged closer. And Meri began writing about something she had never admitted out loud, not even to herself. She wrote, "Maybe I stayed too long. Maybe I forgot my own worth. Maybe being strong doesn't mean holding on. Maybe it means letting go." Her hand trembled as the words spilled out, because this was the first time she wasn't writing about loss, or betrayal, or heartbreak. She was writing about future. Her future. A future she didn't have to share, justify, or shrink herself for. And just as she put down the pen, something unexpected happened. Her phone buzzed. A notification. A name she hadn't seen in a while. A message that made her freeze. She stared at the screen, her heart suddenly unsure, her breath shallow, her mind racing. Zona lifted her head, sensing the shift instantly. She pressed against Meri again, grounding her with that silent, steady presence, almost as if she was saying, "Whatever it is, you're not facing it alone." Meri took a deep breath and clicked the message open. And in that moment, that single, quiet moment, everything she thought she had processed, everything she thought she had moved past, everything she thought she had healed from, came rushing right back. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Something Meri hadn't felt in a very long time. And with Zona watching her, waiting, almost guarding her, Meri whispered, "Why now?" But the question wasn't for Zona. It wasn't for herself. It was for the person on the other end of that message, the person who had once held so much of her heart, the person who, somehow, still had the power to shake her world with a single line. And what that message said? Well, that's where everything shifts. Meri stared at her phone, frozen. Her breath caught somewhere between her throat and her heart. Zona shifted closer, ears perked, sensing the weight in the room. On the screen, the message was simple. Too simple. Just 6 words. 6 words that cracked open a door Meri had sealed shut long ago. "Can we talk, just once more?" The voice inside her split instantly. One part said, "No, you've healed too much to walk backwards." The other whispered, "Maybe closure isn't finished yet." Zona nudged her arm, soft and slow, almost like a reminder, of everything Meri had rebuilt, everything she had survived, everything she had become. Meri closed her eyes and exhaled, a long, trembling breath. She looked around her living room, the open notebook, the warm lamp glow, Zona's steady presence, and realized that the life she'd created on her own felt more real, more honest, more peaceful than anything she had clung to before. But still, those 6 words echoed, not because she needed the person who sent them, but because some stories never let you go without the truth. Meri set her phone down slowly, placed her hand gently on Zona's head, and whispered, "Maybe it's time I answered, or maybe it's time I finally say goodbye." And that's where it ends. Because what Meri decides next, whether she opens that old chapter one last time, or closes it forever, that choice, only she can make. But one thing is certain, with Zona by her side, she will never face it alone. And trust me, whatever comes next is going to change everything. If this moment hit your heart the way it hit mine, make sure you like this video, drop a comment telling me what you think Meri should do next, and subscribe to Reality Tea so you never miss the next chapter in this powerful journey. Because Meri's story isn't over. Not even close.